steel bridge with an entirely hollow mind. I had just endured the most horrifying shock imaginable when my beloved husband suddenly passed away in a tragic car accident, leaving me entirely alone in this brutal storm of life. Before that agonizing pain could even begin to subside, the company I had dedicated years of my life to ruthlessly terminated my employment the very next morning, pushing me into complete destitution without any source of income. Clinging to the last fragile thread of hope, I dragged my worn suitcase back to my childhood home, seeking a safe sanctuary, but my parents callously threw all my belongings out onto the freezing street without a shred of pity. They cruelly declared that my old bedroom had to be cleared out immediately to make space for my older sister, who had just gotten divorced, allowing her to return home to enjoy their pampering. Driven to the absolute brink between life and death by their betrayal, I looked down at the churning dark water below, ready to let go of everything. Right at that fragile boundary of survival, a heavily scarred gangster suddenly lunged forward, forcefully yanking me away from the dangerous railing. He stared directly into my terrified eyes, growling with absolute certainty. "Are you Jenna? Because you really need to step back right now so I can help you get that house back." Before we uncover the shocking truth behind my family's betrayal, alongside how I reclaim notification bell, so you never miss any of our thrilling upcoming stories. Exactly 1 hour after that desperate moment on the freezing steel bridge, the battered pickup truck belonging to the stranger brought me to a rundown repair shop hidden away in the industrial district. Stepping inside the dimly lit workspace that smelled heavily of motor oil, the scarred man finally introduced himself properly as Marcus. He explicitly revealed his true identity as a notorious local underground figure who merely operated this isolated automotive garage as a convenient front to camouflage his actual network of illicit business dealings. Hearing his confession normally would have terrified a regular suburban wife, but my current absolute state of emotional numbness completely shielded me from feeling any traditional sense of fear toward his deeply intimidating physical presence. My completely shattered soul felt absolutely nothing except a massive hollow void echoing continuously inside my chest. I immediately curled my trembling body into a thin wool blanket on an old leather sofa while desperately trying to mentally process the horrific avalanche of tragedies that had just demolished my entire existence. Observing my fragile condition without uttering a single word initially, Marcus simply dragged a heavy metal chair across the concrete floor before pouring a steaming cup of black coffee to place gently into my freezing palms. The immense warmth radiating through the ceramic mug provided the very first sensation of physical comfort I had experienced since the devastating phone call announcing the fatal car crash involving David. Breaking the suffocating silence filling the garage, Marcus locked his intense gaze directly with mine to reveal an absolutely shocking secret that completely derailed my understanding of reality. He solemnly confessed that my grandfather was actually his greatest benefactor, who had selflessly risked his own life to rescue a younger Marcus from a bloody pursuit orchestrated by a ruthless rival gang many years ago. Hearing about grandfather bringing salvation to a wounded criminal fleeing through the freezing Denver night felt incredibly surreal, yet somehow deeply comforting during my own darkest hour of profound need. Leaning forward with absolute seriousness etched across his weathered face, he carefully explained that the quiet hill mansion where my parents currently resided was never legally theirs to claim or control. Marcus emphatically clarified that the sprawling estate was actually a private inheritance grandfather had specifically left exclusively to me through his original legal will before his tragic passing. He detailed how his underground associates had always kept a watchful eye on that particular property out of profound respect for the benevolent old man who had mercifully granted him a second chance at life. "Your parents never owned a single brick of that house because the old man specifically ensured your name was the only one written on those final deeds," Marcus stated with an unwavering tone of absolute certainty echoing through the garage. A massive wave of pure resentment instantly exploded deep within my chest as the bitter realization of my family's ultimate betrayal finally crashed over my consciousness in full force. I agonizingly understood that Mom and Dad had deliberately utilized my absolute lowest moment of profound grief and sudden unemployment to ruthlessly throw me onto the street like disposable garbage. They eagerly cleared out my childhood bedroom for Brenda, simply because my current destitute situation meant I possessed no more exploitable financial value for them to selfishly drain. The sheer cruelty required to watch their own grieving daughter sobbing on their snowy porch, while knowing they were actively stealing her rightful inheritance, made my blood boil with unprecedented venom. They looked me right in the eyes while throwing my suitcases out into the freezing snow, knowing exactly what they had stolen from me. I whispered with a voice trembling from pure, unadulterated rage rather than sorrow. Seeing the absolute devastation mixed with growing fury, transforming my tear-stained expression, Marcus firmly slammed his calloused fist onto the wooden table while declaring his unwavering commitment to my vengeance. He confidently promised to mobilize his entire underground network immediately to investigate the exact truth behind how my family managed to forge those legal documents to claim ownership. His solemn vow to expose their shameless theft provided the exact foundation of strength I desperately needed to transition from a helpless victim into a woman preparing for absolute war against her own treacherous bloodline. 3 days after that fateful night, the ringing of my phone violently shattered the suffocating silence inside the cramped motel room I had just temporarily rented. Marcus forcefully threw a remarkably thick stack of confidential files, gathered from his underground intelligence sources, directly onto the scratched wooden table. He explicitly pointed out the undeniable photographic evidence, proving that Mom, Dad, and Brenda were secretly communicating with luxury real estate agents to quickly liquidate the Hill Mansion for several $1 million. The glossy brochures they had already commissioned featured beautiful pictures of the home where grandfather had raised me, casually marketing my precious childhood memories to the highest bidder. The sheer audacity of their clandestine operation to sell my rightful inheritance behind my back fueled a completely new level of blazing hatred within my previously numb soul. The two of us carefully scrutinized every single microscopic detail printed across the fraudulent copy of the current property ownership certificate under the harsh fluorescent lighting of the room. We quickly discovered several incredibly unnatural breaks within the intricate cursive strokes forming grandfather's signature at the bottom of the page, completely lacking the smooth fluidity he always maintained despite his advanced age. The blatantly disjointed ink patterns unequivocally proved that this official legal document was nothing more than a remarkably clumsy forgery created by a deeply unskilled criminal hand struggling to mimic his elegant writing style. The forged strokes betrayed a hesitation that grandfather never possessed when handling his personal affairs, cementing the absolute illegitimacy of their entire ownership claim. Clutching the falsified paper tightly in my trembling hands until my knuckles turned completely white, I could no longer conceal my overwhelming indignation regarding their unfathomable depravity. Did they really steal grandfather's final wish just to satisfy Brenda's bottomless greed? I asked, with a deeply quivering voice echoing with profound disbelief and unadulterated venom. The sickening realization that my own flesh and blood would shamelessly desecrate a dead man's dying request merely to fund their lavish lifestyle felt like a physical knife twisting mercilessly inside my chest. Their bottomless avarice had completely erased whatever lingering familial affection I might have still harbored toward them, replacing my sorrow with a cold determination to see them punished. Utilizing his fearsome reputation to exert immense physical pressure on several notoriously dangerous loan sharks specializing in black market documentation throughout the local area, Marcus ruthlessly interrogated them for any valuable leads, He masterfully leveraged his intimidating presence to extract a priceless piece of highly sensitive information regarding the highly suspicious disappearance of a crucial witness connected to the estate. The terrified criminals eventually confessed everything they knew about the sudden vanishing act of the loyal employee who had managed grandfather's personal affairs for decades before being forcefully driven into hiding by intimidation. Marcus slammed the remaining intelligence folders forcefully onto the table while grinding his teeth together with intense frustration regarding the rapidly escalating situation. They bought off and threatened Higgins, "We need to find that old man before your family silences the witness." He growled with a chillingly authoritative tone, demanding immediate action to prevent a total disaster. His ominous warning effectively highlighted the extreme danger hovering over the only person capable of corroborating the absolute truth about the stolen inheritance and the fabricated documents facilitating their massive theft. The freshly extracted information conclusively confirmed that grandfather's former secretary, Mr. Higgins, was currently hiding in a severely dilapidated nursing home located deep within the isolated rural suburbs. The terrified elderly gentleman had apparently chosen that utterly desolate facility, specifically to evade the dangerous underground forces threatening his life on behalf of my treacherous family members. Knowing that Brenda and my parents possessed the financial resources to hire dangerous individuals to permanently eliminate him made our rescue mission a matter of extreme urgency that could not wait another day. Without wasting a single second contemplating the immense risks associated with our impending confrontation, Marcus and I immediately rushed outside toward his battered vehicle waiting under the sweltering midday sun. I buckled my seatbelt with absolute determination as the roaring engine propelled us rapidly down the scorching asphalt highway, leading toward the remote suburban outskirts where the nursing home stood. We were entirely committed to locating Higgins to recover the final missing piece of this incredibly cruel puzzle to completely destroy the elaborate empire of lies my family had constructed over my grandfather's grave. That Friday afternoon, we stepped into the desolate room numbered 402 at the suburban nursing home, exactly as the faded sunlight filtered through the heavily dust-coated window panes. The moment my familiar face appeared at the decaying threshold, a porcelain teacup completely slipped from Mr. Higgins's grasp to shatter loudly against the worn linoleum floor. The frail elderly man stared at me with overwhelming astonishment before his voice choked with profound emotion while breathlessly calling my name across the quiet space. Without needing any further prompting from either of us, he immediately began recounting the deeply sorrowful final words grandfather had weakly spoken during his agonizingly painful last days on Earth. Using his severely wrinkled and trembling hands to steady himself against the mattress, the aging man slowly lowered his frail body to pull a heavily rusted iron box from beneath the metal bed frame. He retrieved a small brass key hidden securely beneath a loose floorboard to carefully unlock the incredibly heavy container protecting the explosive secrets regarding my stolen inheritance. Nestled safely inside the dark velvet lining lay the authentic original property ownership certificate legally bearing my full name, alongside a meticulously notarized legitimate last will that had never been publicly disclosed. Seeing the undeniable proof of my legal ownership physically materializing right before my eyes ignited a massive wave of vindication that temporarily overpowered the lingering grief suffocating my wounded heart. Tears streamed continuously down Mr. Higgins's weathered cheeks, as the overwhelming guilt he had carried for months finally shattered his cowardly resolve in front of his beloved former employer's granddaughter. He bowed his head in profound shame while trembling uncontrollably beneath the weight of his deeply troubling confession regarding the terrifying events following the burial ceremony. "I am so deeply sorry, Miss Jenna, because right after your grandfather's funeral concluded, your parents brought violent thugs directly to my house to violently force my absolute silence so they could freely create that fraudulent will." He whimpered with a voice breaking from immense self-hatred. His devastating admission effectively confirmed the horrifying lengths my treacherous flesh and blood were willing to cross, merely to secure an unearned, luxurious lifestyle built entirely upon a mountain of malicious deceit. Clutching those yellowed documents carrying the sacred dying wishes of the deceased patriarch tightly against my chest, my shattered heart violently constricted under the massive weight of unprecedented indignation. The sheer cowardice, selfishness, and unfathomable cruelty displayed by the very same people I had spent my entire childhood deeply respecting completely destroyed my fundamental understanding of familial love. They had shamelessly weaponized my profound mourning period to ruthlessly orchestrate a meticulously planned theft that stripped away the only physical sanctuary grandfather had painstakingly built to protect me. The absolute moral bankruptcy required to terrorize an innocent old man while simultaneously leaving their own grieving daughter homeless in the freezing snow was utterly unforgivable under any circumstances. Staring intently at the incredibly familiar, elegant handwriting meticulously tracing my grandfather's final signature across the legitimate legal parchment, a cold and calculating darkness permanently extinguished the remaining warmth inside my soul. I slowly turned my hardened gaze toward Marcus standing silently by the doorway gripping the fragile paperwork until my knuckles turned completely white from the immense physical pressure. I will make Brenda and every single one of them pay the absolute highest price imaginable for this unbelievably despicable betrayal. I growled through clenched teeth with a terrifyingly calm demeanor. The fiery vengeance blazing within my eyes mirrored the fierce protective instincts the scarred gangster had previously displayed, cementing an unbreakable alliance between two completely different souls united by a singular destructive purpose. Instead of acting upon my initial impulsive desire to immediately drag this explosive mountain of irrefutable evidence directly to the local police precinct to loudly report their massive criminal conspiracy, Marcus and I quickly agreed upon a far more ruthless countermeasure. We collaboratively decided to maintain absolute silence and lay completely low in the shadows while patiently waiting for the exact day my treacherous family planned to proudly host their lavish private real estate auction party. Crashing their highly anticipated high society gathering with the irrefutable truth would not only guarantee their immediate legal incarceration, but also ensure their permanent public humiliation in front of the wealthiest investors in the entire state. Exactly 48 hours before the highly anticipated private auction ceremony officially commenced, an incredibly tense atmosphere enveloped the spacious downtown office as we sat directly opposite one of the most formidable legal minds residing in the entire state. Breaking the heavy silence in the room, Marcus formally introduced me to a lawyer named Miller, a notorious legal expert with a fearsome reputation within the fiercely competitive judicial system. This particular attorney had never tasted the bitter flavor of defeat while systematically dismantling the most sophisticated real estate fraud syndicates operating throughout the wealthy metropolitan area. His imposing physical presence combined with his remarkably sharp intellect instantly provided a massive surge of much-needed confidence regarding the monumental legal battle looming violently on the immediate horizon. After silently retrieving a specialized jeweler's magnifying glass from his tailored suit pocket to meticulously scrutinize the intricate legal seal stamped across the original will, provided by Mr. Higgins, a chillingly confident smile slowly materialized across his remarkably sharp features. He carefully placed the fragile yellowed parchment back onto the polished mahogany desk with the utmost reverence before immediately beginning to mentally calculate the most devastating legal maneuvers available to completely obliterate their fraudulent ownership claims. The brilliant legal strategist thoroughly analyzed every single forged signature resting upon the fake documents Marcus had previously acquired to perfectly contrast them against the undeniable authenticity radiating from the highly protected paperwork salvaged from the hidden iron box. The seasoned attorney rhythmically tapped his index finger against the heavy wooden surface, while projecting a voice overflowing with absolute certainty and razor-sharp precision that sent deeply validating shivers down my exhausted spine. With these undeniable original pieces of evidence securely in our possession, I can absolutely guarantee that your parents and your older sister will spend several decades rotting away inside a maximum security federal prison for orchestrating this massive deception. He declared with an unwavering conviction that instantly justified all the agonizing pain I had endured since being heartlessly thrown onto the freezing streets. His professional confirmation regarding the severe criminal penalties awaiting my treacherous relatives effectively transformed my raw emotional vengeance into a highly calculated legal execution designed to permanently cripple their luxurious lifestyle. The three of us immediately huddled closely together over the expansive table to meticulously draft an absolutely flawless infiltration campaign targeting the exclusive high society private auction being hosted directly inside my stolen childhood home. We strategically calculated every single microscopic step of our impending public confrontation to completely guarantee there would be absolutely zero available loopholes or technicalities, permitting the treacherous culprits to somehow deny their massive criminal conspiracy in front of the wealthy investors. Miller expertly advised us on the precise timing required to dramatically present the irrefutable evidence specifically designed to maximize their public humiliation, while simultaneously triggering the immediate intervention of the local law enforcement authorities waiting nearby. A remarkably brief flutter of emotional hesitation weakly crossed my exhausted mind when I fully comprehended the severe reality of permanently condemning my own biological flesh and blood into the unforgiving grip of the penal system. However, the deeply traumatizing visual memory of myself desperately kneeling in the freezing winter snow while enduring Brenda's sickeningly contemptuous smile violently crushed that pathetic remnant of familial loyalty into absolute dust. The agonizing recollection of my own parents completely prioritizing their insatiable greed over the basic survival of their recently widowed daughter permanently extinguished any lingering capacity for forgiveness hiding within my deeply scarred heart. Needing to permanently solidify my psychological resolve for this impending ruthless revenge operation, I looked directly into the experienced attorney's calculating eyes with a terrifyingly firm determination blazing fiercely inside my own soul. There will be absolutely no mercy whatsoever granted to any of them under any circumstances, so please immediately request an emergency arrest warrant from the Supreme Court judge while preparing a heavily armed police task force to stand by outside the mansion. I commanded, with a voice completely devoid of any lingering compassion. This definitive legal strategy perfectly finalized our extensive preparation to completely destroy the glamorous high society facade my treacherous relatives had so ruthlessly constructed over the stolen legacy of the deceased patriarch. On the pristine Sunday morning of the highly anticipated auction, the sprawling atmosphere surrounding the majestic hill mansion was completely overflowing with the melodious sounds of symphonic music mixing seamlessly with the constant clinking of crystal champagne glasses. Dad, Mom, and Brenda had meticulously draped themselves in ridiculously expensive designer garments to perfectly imitate the elegant presence of authentic aristocrats, born into generational wealth. They continuously displayed sickeningly fake smiles dripping with unearned smugness, while enthusiastically welcoming dozens of exceptionally wealthy real estate investors arriving to tour the expansive property. The lavish catering stations and magnificent floral arrangements specifically designed to mask their underlying financial desperation successfully created a flawless illusion of high society grandeur for the prospective buyers. I confidently strode straight through the towering oak doors into the grand main hall, with my head held exceptionally high while wearing a remarkably sharp, custom-tailored black suit that radiated pure, unadulterated authority. Walking immediately behind my right shoulder was Marcus, whose intensely murderous facial expression and heavily scarred physical presence generated an incredibly suffocating invisible pressure against the pretentious crowd. The undeniable power radiating from my impeccably styled appearance established an absolutely massive contrast against the pathetically ragged victim they had so callously discarded into the freezing snow just a few weeks prior. Several curious guests paused their conversations to stare at our completely unexpected arrival as the heavy wooden doors firmly clicked shut behind us. The blood completely drained from Brenda's meticulously contoured face, the exact second her greedy eyes registered my incredibly commanding silhouette standing directly beneath the massive crystal chandelier illuminating the foyer. She immediately abandoned her wealthy conversational partners with a hastily fabricated excuse before frantically rushing across the polished marble floor to aggressively grab my tailored sleeve. Her manicured fingers dug painfully into my forearm as she forcefully dragged my unresisting body toward a deeply shadowed alcove positioned far away from the prying eyes of the extremely affluent attendees. The sheer panic vibrating through her trembling grip hilariously exposed the fragile foundation of the glamorous high society facade she was desperately attempting to maintain. Completely unable to contain her boiling temper regarding my sudden disruptive appearance at her meticulously orchestrated financial salvation, she aggressively backed me into the decorative wooden paneling. "What exactly are you doing here with your pathetic ragged face? So get the hell out of my house immediately before I call the private security guards to permanently throw you into the garbage dumpster." She hissed venomously through tightly clenched teeth to avoid attracting any unwanted attention from the wealthy bidders. Her viciously whispered threat was completely saturated with the familiar toxic arrogance that had previously tormented my entire childhood, while she selfishly hoarded our parents' suffocating affection. The sheer audacity required to claim ownership over the very same property she was currently attempting to steal only intensified the burning flames of vengeance blazing deep within my soul. Choosing to completely ignore those incredibly cheap growling threats echoing around the secluded alcove, I forcefully brushed her trembling hand off my expensive jacket with a gesture of absolute supreme disgust. "You should just go ahead and enthusiastically enjoy your absolute last few moments of this fake glamorous illusion, because this entire theatrical stage you built is about to spectacularly collapse," I replied with a terrifyingly cold calmness that completely froze the remaining blood pumping through her veins. The profound psychological weight carried by my unwavering confidence successfully shattered her superficial superiority complex, without requiring me to raise my voice even a single decibel above a hushed whisper. Even though my chilling silence and subsequent mocking smirk caused a freezing layer of nervous sweat to rapidly accumulate across her flawless makeup, her deeply ingrained greed ultimately overpowered her rising paranoia. Her insatiable hunger for the millions of dollars currently standing inside the main hall aggressively compelled her to forcefully swallow her escalating anxiety while aggressively smoothing out the invisible wrinkles on her designer dress. Mustering every single ounce of her signature deceitful charm, Brenda confidently stepped away from the shadows to proudly ascend the elevated center podium to officially commence the fraudulent real estate auction. She foolishly believed she had successfully neutralized the immediate threat while remaining completely oblivious to the catastrophic legal nightmare actively surrounding the perimeter of the stolen estate. Exactly when the staggering starting bid of $5 million was loudly announced by the highly confident professional auctioneer, I ultimately decided to ruthlessly deliver the absolute final punishing blow. Harnessing every single ounce of suppressed fury accumulated over the past few agonizing weeks, I executed an incredibly powerful stride directly toward the elevated center podium dominating the expansive grand hall. Completely ignoring the shocked gasps echoing from the wealthy attendees, I aggressively snatched the microphone directly from Brenda's trembling manicured hands without a single ounce of hesitation. I immediately projected my voice across the entire luxurious room while loudly declaring to the numerous flashing cameras that this highly exclusive auction was actually a filthy criminal scam designed to blatantly steal my legitimate property. The sophisticated crowd of prospective buyers instantaneously erupted into a massive collective gasp of pure astonishment as the deafening feedback from the stolen microphone pierced through the elegant symphonic music. Locking my unwavering gaze directly onto the terrified faces of the pathetic traders standing completely paralyzed on the lavish stage, I firmly squeezed the metallic handle while broadcasting the ultimate devastating truth. This magnificent house legally belongs to my exclusive ownership because the fraudulent will this treacherous family is currently using is absolutely nothing more than a cheap forged piece of paper. I powerfully announced with an ironclad conviction that effectively shattered their carefully constructed illusion of high society grandeur into a million irreparable pieces. Witnessing his meticulously orchestrated financial salvation spectacularly evaporating right before his very eyes, Dad became furiously red in the face, while veins visibly bulged across his deeply wrinkled forehead. He frantically waved his trembling arms toward the perimeter of the room, while desperately screaming frantic orders at the group of burly private security guards hired for the lavish event. Arrest this crazy girl immediately and violently throw her out into the street for me. Please do not let her completely ruin our extremely lucrative business deal today. He bellowed with a hilariously pathetic mixture of absolute panic and furious desperation echoing terribly throughout the massive crystal chandelier illuminating the foyer. Before the highly paid private bodyguards could even twitch a single muscle to execute those frantic commands, Marcus heavily stepped forward to completely block their path with an absolutely overwhelming aura of murderous intent. The severely scarred gangster merely cracked his massive knuckles while fixing the approaching security detail with a terrifyingly deadpan glare that instantly froze their cowardly boots securely to the polished marble floor. Simultaneously taking advantage of the paralyzed security forces, Miller calmly walked up the carpeted stairs toward the central podium, while exuding the supreme professional confidence of a legal predator cornering his trapped prey. The brilliant attorney proudly held high the perfectly preserved original certificate of ownership alongside the devastating forensic police report conclusively proving the clumsy forgery of the deceased patriarch's signature for everyone to clearly witness. The entire luxurious viewing gallery violently exploded into absolute unadulterated outrage as the wealthy real estate investors loudly shouted furious curses while aggressively demanding immediate explanations from Mom and Dad. Several prominent corporate executives immediately grabbed their expensive tailored coats while angrily threatening massive multi-million-dollar lawsuits against the completely disgraced family for attempting to involve their respectable businesses in a major felony scheme. Standing completely frozen beneath the blazing spotlight, Brenda merely stammered incoherently while choking on her own toxic panic because she was utterly incapable of verbally denying the irrefutable ironclad evidence presented directly to the wealthy crowd. The glamorous designer dress she proudly wore suddenly looked like a remarkably pathetic prison uniform as the devastating reality of her impending incarceration finally crushed her greedy delusions. Right exactly when the catastrophic chaos occupying the grand hall escalated to an absolutely irredeemable peak of furious shouting and frantic scrambling. A massive tactical squad of heavily armed police officers violently kicked open the main oak doors. The imposing law enforcement officials aggressively stormed into the luxurious foyer while loudly announcing the execution of an emergency judicial arrest warrant authorized directly by the highest Supreme Court judge. The tactical team immediately bypassed the completely stunned wealthy investors while marching straight toward the three severely trembling figures desperately clinging to each other upon the ruined auction podium, cementing the glorious destruction of their despicable criminal empire. Within a remarkably brief span of merely 10 minutes, the contemptuous whispers and severely disdainful glares completely replaced the entirely fake glamour saturating the ruined high society ceremony. The heavily armed tactical police officers decisively handcuffed Mom, Dad, and Brenda with absolute professional efficiency, while aggressive camera flashes continuously illuminated their spectacular public downfall. The stern law enforcement officials forcefully escorted the profoundly humiliated family members through the heavily parted crowd of deeply disgusted wealthy guests directly toward the waiting specialized squad cars parked outside. The imposing detectives loudly read them their constitutional rights, while officially charging them with exceptionally serious criminal felonies, specifically regarding grand-scale property fraud and malicious document forgery. Right before being aggressively shoved into the uncomfortable back seats of the heavily reinforced police cruisers by the unyielding officers, Mom and Dad began screaming hysterically while shedding completely pathetic crocodile tears. They desperately lowered themselves to frantically beg me to somehow remember our shared biological bloodline, while pleading for me to immediately drop the severe criminal charges threatening to permanently destroy their lives. Instead of displaying even a single microscopic ounce of lingering familial mercy toward the treacherous individuals who gleefully threw me into the freezing snow, I merely offered a remarkably cold smirk. I completely ignored their pathetic wailing while decisively turning my back to walk away from their extremely toxic existence forever, without shedding a single tear of regret. With the exceptionally formidable legal assistance provided by Miller masterfully navigating the incredibly complex judicial system over the following weeks, I officially regained the absolute legal ownership over the magnificent suburban mansion. The brilliant attorney systematically dismantled every single fraudulent claim my treacherous relatives had previously established, using the forged documents permanently securing the incredibly valuable estate grandfather had painstakingly saved his entire lifetime to bestow upon me. The presiding Supreme Court judge explicitly finalized the legal transfer while heavily praising our meticulous evidence gathering that successfully prevented a massive financial crime from occurring within his esteemed jurisdiction. Absolutely refusing to preserve the deeply painful and incredibly dirty psychological memories permanently attached to that corrupted household, where my family had plotted my ultimate destruction, I decisively chose a different path. I utilized Miller's extensive professional network to legally auction the luxurious property to the highest legitimate bidder during a fully transparent commercial transaction completely devoid of any criminal deception. Following the highly successful multi-million-dollar real estate transfer, I proudly donated a substantial portion of the massive financial profits directly to a local philanthropic organization to beautifully fulfill grandfather's noble final wishes. Utilizing the remaining legitimate financial resources securely deposited into my personal banking accounts from the incredibly lucrative property sale, I completely rebuilt an entirely new existence, emerging victoriously from the suffocating ashes. I confidently established a highly successful private commercial enterprise, specializing in independent design consulting while continuously receiving the incredibly steadfast companionship and unwavering operational support from the absolutely wonderful friend named Marcus. The heavily scarred former gangster completely transformed his own dangerous lifestyle to become my most trusted business partner and closest confidant as we aggressively expanded our legitimate corporate ventures throughout the prosperous metropolitan area. Having successfully navigated through the incredibly brutal and devastatingly ruthless storms of my previously shattered existence, following the tragic death of my beloved husband, I finally discovered a profoundly genuine sense of absolute tranquility. This profound inner peace deeply residing within my healing soul provides the ultimate foundation required to confidently face whatever unpredictable challenges the future might eventually throw into my newly forged trajectory. I currently possess the ultimate fundamental freedom to independently rebuild my entire destiny without ever being bound by any malicious psychological manipulation or financial extortion from the incredibly toxic people who once tried to destroy me. Before we officially wrap up today's incredibly intense narrative, please do not hastily click away, because I want to personally share some profound reflections regarding the massive educational value hidden within Jenna's turbulent, powerful reminder that bottomless human greed possesses the terrifying capability to completely obliterate even the most sacred biological relationships. The treacherous actions committed by Jenna's parents perfectly illustrate the timeless universal truth that manipulative deceit ultimately yields nothing except catastrophic destruction and cold prison bars instead of lasting prosperity. True family is absolutely never strictly defined by mere genetic biology, but rather by the deeply authentic loyalty consistently demonstrated during your darkest hours of profound vulnerability. I personally believe Jenna made the absolutely correct decision by completely severing ties with her toxic bloodline to fiercely protect her own mental sanity and rightfully reclaim her stolen destiny. If you found yourself suddenly thrust into Jenna's desperately heartbreaking situation, would you have displayed the exact same ruthlessness to legally imprison your own biological parents for their unforgivable financial betrayal? Please share your brutally honest personal opinions and alternative psychological perspectives down in the comment section below, because I genuinely love reading your insightful thoughts. Thank you incredibly much for listening to the very end, and I will eagerly see you